Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you need and give you the essential nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating mission.
Hmm.
We're trying to find the true source of leadership in a world that is just completely obsessed with titles, with corner offices, with all that formal authority.
Right.
We're diving into a model that challenges that whole status-driven worldview. It
Mm.
argues that leadership is really about influence, and that influence is entirely shaped by character.
Exactly. This deep dive is built around Chris R. Villasis's framework from Leadership Beyond Position. And the core idea is, well, it's startlingly simple, but also really profound.
Okay.
The argument is that many organizations, corporate, community, you name it, they don't fail because they lack skilled people.
So it's not a talent problem.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They fail because there's a shortage of people willing to steward their influence faithfully,
Yeah.
to endure with integrity when the pressure really starts to mount.
I really like that focus on endurance. So what we're doing here is challenging the idea that leadership is some kind of restricted privilege.
Yes.
Something you only get when someone hands you a fancy business card. The question this all addresses for you, the listener, is just essential. How do you lead faithfully, effectively, in these complex, often discouraging environments without waiting for permission?
Let's get right to the core argument of the book then.
Okay.
It seems like we have to redefine success right from the start.
They do.
The world has one definition, but this model demands a pretty radical shift. What's the fundamental change the author is calling for?
The essential move is from domination to stewardship.
The domination to stewardship.
Okay, the world looks at leadership and it sees status, visibility,
Yeah.
privilege. It equates success with how high you can climb the ladder.
Sure.
The book just counters that completely. It says true leadership is stewardship, it's influence, and it's accountability, all centered on your character.
That distinction is critical, but I want to push on it a bit. In the modern business world, positional authority gives you fast access, right?
Yeah.
Immediate results.
It does. So if I'm a steward, not a dominator, my success depends on long-term trust. How does a steward even compete with someone who can just command resources because of their title?
And that's the friction point. It really is.
Yeah.
Titles grant immediate authority, that speed, that access you just mentioned. But the framework argues that only character sustains trust.
Right.
Positional authority is inherently brittle. It only lasts as long as the organization says it does. But influence, that's based on character? That's durable. Think about a CEO who gets fired after one, a unethical but profitable quarter. Their domination was fast, but their influence just evaporated overnight.
Gone.
Gone. But a leader whose currency is their integrity.
Yeah.
They can move between organizations, they can endure a crisis, and their influence, it actually outlives their job title.
So the bigger the platform, the brighter the spotlight on the person holding the mic. The book really drives this home, and with a kind of sobering clarity. It's not just about being accountable for the results, is it?
No, not at all. The principle here is universal. The more influence you have, the greater the moral and ethical scrutiny you're going to face. It's inevitable.
And the accountability is for your character, first and foremost.
Primarily for your character. If you see leadership as just a position, you only focus on the numbers, the outcomes. But if you see it as stewardship, you focus on integrity, on moral clarity, and on the health of the very thing you've been entrusted with.
This brings up a huge psychological barrier for so many of us, I think.
Mm.
If genuine leadership starts internally, with character, conviction, all of that, why do we always wait for external permission, for a title change, for a promotion before we start acting like leaders?
Well, this confusion of leadership with position creates two major dangers in the real world. First, it just stifles potential. The ordinary person feels, unauthorized to step up.
They're waiting for a green light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Waiting for a sign or a budget. And second, and this is more dangerous, it corrupts institutions.
Mhm.
It happens when the influence granted by the position outpaces the integrity of the person holding it.
That's a powerful idea.
The whole transformation begins when you stop asking, what position do I hold? And you start asking, what kind of person am I becoming under the weight of the influence I already have?
Mm-hmm.
And building on that, what's really fascinating here is this consistent blueprint in the source material.
Okay.
The idea that God forms leaders long, long before he ever positions them. The preparation focuses less on, say, visible performance and much more on obedience and that quiet foundational work.
I think this is where so many modern systems just get it wrong. We prioritize fast tracking, high visibility, but the book argues that the most potent leadership skills are actually built in the shadows.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's get into the classic examples. How did those mundane, unseen tasks build the skills they needed?
Okay, let's take David. We know him for Goliath, for the kingship.
Yeah.
But his core leadership skills, they were forged when he was a shepherd in some forgotten field.
Right. Totally unseen.
Exactly. And what did that obscurity teach him? It taught him vigilance against predators, courage against unseen threats, and crucially, a deep responsibility for others who couldn't protect themselves.
So when he faces Goliath later on, it's not some ambitious move.
Not at all. Yeah. It was just the application of the courage and faith he'd already been practicing for years with absolutely no recognition.
And his leadership didn't just appear when he got the crown. Even after he was anointed, he had to lead without a throne for a long time.
A very long time.
The integrity he showed when he spared Saul's life, when he could have just seized power, that choice proved his leadership came before his title. The crown was just a public recognition of what was already true.
Absolutely. Then you got Joseph. He influenced the most powerful empire of his day, not through, political ambition or networking.
He did it from prison.
From prison. His influence came from discipline, faithfulness, and integrity in these tiny responsibilities. Managing a household, then managing a prison, long before he managed the nation's famine response. His leadership ability required years of faithfulness through suffering.
So the framework is teaching that leadership really begins in those daily decisions.
That's it. The ones that reveal your true values, especially when you know for a fact that no one is watching you.
That focus on character is compelling, but the book also grounds this whole model in Christ's actions, which just radically redefine power. For those of us looking to lead beyond a title, what defines that servant-hearted influence?
Christ basically dismantled the whole idea that leadership is about command or self-advancement. I mean, you remember the disciples arguing about who was the greatest?
Yeah, of course.
He draws this stark contrast between the worldly rulers who lorded over them and his followers. He says, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant.
And he didn't just say it.
No, he embodied it. By washing their feet, an act that just completely inverted every social norm of the day. It shows that influence flows not from issuing commands, but from sacrificial service.
That kind of servanthood seems almost impossible in today's competitive world. It requires so much courage to be vulnerable and focus on others when everyone else is just trying to climb.
It does.
And that brings us to the second pillar, courageous faith in uncertain times. How does this model connect service to taking risks?
Biblical leadership is almost always forged in risk and ambiguity, not in, clarity and safety.
Right. We love our 5-year plans and risk assessments.
We do.
Yeah.
But the source material pushes back hard on that, arguing that real leadership demands a faith-informed kind of courage.
The story of Esther just captures that perfectly. Her leadership moment was distilled into that one choice: stay quiet and safe, or speak up for her people.
If I perish, I perish.
Exactly. That phrase says it all.
And her courage was this incredible form of faith-informed resolve. She was acting without any guarantees, grounded in trust, not in certainty.
She wasn't being reckless, though.
Not at all. She sought wisdom, she prayed, but she acted knowing the personal cost could be lethal. It mirrors figures like William Wilberforce, who spent decades fighting the slave trade. His influence didn't come from political ambition. It came from that deep moral conviction, choosing perseverance over easier political wins. And that takes immense spiritual courage.
So spiritual courage is less about being fearless and more about the disciplined choice to trust a greater purpose, even when you're afraid. It reshapes leadership from a pursuit of personal control into an exercise of faith. Okay, so we've established that leadership is influence, it's formed in obscurity, and it's powered by service and courage. But let's talk about the longevity problem.
The burnout problem, yes.
Charisma and a good strategy might get you noticed quickly, but how does the book address the sheer weight of long-term influence? How do leaders actually endure?
Enduring leadership is forged through continuous internal conditioning.
Internal conditioning.
It's the shaping of the inner life, your soul, so that your character and your conduct stay aligned with your purpose. The book argues that influence will inevitably test your character. Responsibility only magnifies what's already inside you.
And if you haven't done that internal work,
You become brittle, unsustainable.
that consistency is really what separates some momentary leader from a lasting one. Take Daniel. Exiled in Babylon, he worked under multiple hostile, shifting regimes, yet his influence just span across all of them. Where did that come from?
Well, it wasn't from political maneuvering or, changing his message to fit the times.
Right.
It was disciplined faithfulness.
Mhm.
His consistent practice of prayer, his moral integrity, his refusal to compromise, that all formed an internal bedrock. Because Daniel's character was stable, his external influence remained stable, even when the world around him was chaotic. He endured not by controlling outcomes, but by remaining faithful no matter what.
I want to introduce a little bit of skepticism here. This all sounds very high-minded, but practically speaking, in an organization, if I don't have a title, I don't have a budget. I don't have direct reports.
Sure.
How can I possibly sustain influence? Doesn't focusing so much on the inner life distract from the urgent need for action?
That is a vital question. The book insists that the inner life is the foundation for durable action. But it doesn't just leave you hanging with theory. It provides very clear, actionable steps to put these ideas into practice, to bridge that gap from just, passively observing to really having a purposeful influence.
Okay, so the learner needs those concrete steps. What are the practical tools this framework offers to start leading beyond your position, like tomorrow?
First, there's a concept called mapping influence.
Hmm.
This is the tactical step of identifying spheres, not positions, where you already shape the culture or the values or the outcomes without needing a formal title.
So your project team, maybe your family?
Exactly, your volunteer group, your family. You start leading right where you already stand.
That turns the focus outward. What about the relational part of it?
The book stresses intentional mentoring, building relationships that multiply influence instead of hoarding it. This isn't about hierarchy, it's about investing in other people's growth so your character is reflected in their development.
And to withstand that external pressure and avoid the burnout we were talking about earlier.
That requires something called resilience planning. The book really emphasizes spiritual disciplines, prayer, scripture, community, as the internal resources that build the coherence you need to lead with integrity under fire.
Okay, and any highly specific tools?
Yes. They actually suggest starting a courage journal. This involves recording the decisions where you chose faith and purpose over fear or what was expedient. Reviewing those entries reinforces that habit of trust-driven leadership.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We've seen how leadership is a stewardship of influence, not a title to be dominated. We learned that the most powerful influence is formed in obscurity. It's powered by Christlike service and courageous faith, and it's sustained by an inner commitment that's far deeper than any accolade.
And the final, liberating impact of this whole model is that leading without a position isn't a limitation. It's freedom.
Freedom.
It frees you to act faithfully and to leave a legacy that truly outlasts titles and organizations. This kind of leadership is about equipping the people around you, reflecting a greater purpose, and creating a ripple effect that can transcend generations. It's moving from building your own little kingdom to serving something much, much larger than yourself.
Remember, you do not need permission, position, or prominence to lead. You need purpose, courage, and faith. The world doesn't need more people focused on getting a title. It needs more leaders formed in character. So the final provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. Consider the sphere of influence you already steward faithfully right now. What would change if you began treating that small, unseen sphere with the same vigilance and courage David used on those unseen fields? We invite you to find that answer.